Hey, how are you?
I'm all right. I'm sorry to be late. It just overran a few times.
That's fine. Just give me your Golden Globe. We'll call it even.
Okay.
Congrats on that, by the way. Good timing for this. It's one of my favorite films of the year. So I love when there's recognition for it. But I also just kind of got such a kick out of everyone else in that category was a director also, and they gave it to the one writer. And that's just, I think it's such a great compliment to people recognizing that this is obviously the movie's fun and exciting, intense, but just such an impeccably crafted screenplay.
Well, thank you. I was. You could probably tell from my idiotic grinning face when I accepted it. I was really, really shocked. I didn't think I was going to get it. I really didn't, because it's not divided. It's not divided between adapted and original. So I felt like I was up against a lot of great movies and great screenwriters. So yeah, it was a big shock, but I was delighted.
Listen, the shocks are the fun part, but I listen. Like I said, it's my second favorite movie of the year. I love that people get it because I saw it back at Telluride, and we all kind of went in assuming, obviously Edward made a great film. I love a lot of the things you wrote, and I didn't even think about it that a lot of the things you write do have a very sly sense of humor, but you kind of go in thinking it's going to be prestige and important, and obviously it's at Telluride. That's why it's there. And then, 2 hours later, when we realized you laughed like almost every 2 or 3 minutes for 2 hours. I love that people are realizing that this is a funny movie. This is meant to be fun as opposed to just heavy. And I love that you approached it that way.
But it's sort of embedded in the book itself. I remember there's a line early on where one of the cardinals, Tremblay, says, "Is we're trending." And there was something about this cardinal saying that just felt naturally kind of funny and slightly absurd. And that was kind of the clue to, like, wherever we could put in something like a cardinal vaping or a cardinal on a treadmill, or it's sort of what the film's about, which is that tension between the normal, ordinary modern world and the ancient traditions of the church. And it gave the audience permission to laugh and to relax, and the absurdity of it. All those things were combined in those images.
100%. And even just as an exercise in how you adapt something, how do it's not your first rodeo, but for something that is very tonally specific, right? You 10 different people make this movie 10 different ways. How do you figure out where you want to move real close to the source material and where you want to put your own kind of stamp on it? Because I feel like every year I think about this, people really don't understand adaptations necessarily. Because, a very base model, some people just think, oh, you just copy the words in screenplay form and you hit send. And yes, it would be great if that was true. Probably you'd be able to do 10. So, like, how do you figure out how you want to approach and how do you figure out what's right for the movie you're making?
I think the truth is, at this stage for me now, a lot of it's instinctive. I mean, I've said this before. I've realized that, because I agree with you. I think adaptations are fascinating, and it's a wide spectrum, isn't it, between adaptations that are very close to the book and adaptations that have used the book as a sort of launch pad, to do something quite different. I remember the year where there was No Country for Old Men, which was a very faithful adaptation and a brilliant film. And then the same year there was There Will Be Blood, which was obviously loosely based upon oil, but so different. Both brilliant films. So I love that sort of spectrum with adaptation. And the other thing I noticed, which I find really interesting, is the way in which often the screenwriter has found their own story within the book they're adapting. And as you say, another screenwriter would have found a different story within that book. And I've noticed that again and again, I'm basically telling the same story, even when I'm adapting someone else's book. And that's a story about betrayal and loyalty. It's what, Tinker Tailor is very much about. It was what Frank was about. It's what The Many Star Goats was about. So I think it's partly that, given a choice of path through the woods of a novel, I'm going to go for that one. And I think probably on a more fundamental level, it's when I read a book and think, oh, I want to do that, it's probably because I've realized somewhere that story is embedded in it. What's interesting is knowing that about myself. A, I don't know why that's the story I want to keep telling. And B, it doesn't make any difference. It doesn't seem to help or hinder. I may as well not know. I'm still going to pick those things anyway.
Oh yeah, you're clearly not solving whatever problem you're having. You're just
I'm
working it out.
clearly not.
It's like recurring themes in someone. It's like, no, it's just this is the story I want to tell, and I'm good at it, and I like it, and it clearly resonates in a way. And yeah, you can do it Men Who Stare at Goats and Conclave couldn't be more different. But when you think about it, there is a at least somewhat of a tonal similarity in how they communicate and how characters communicate in the pettiness and the silliness. And I think
Absolutely.
here, just I it's the thing I kept telling people about was just how you're gonna love how just petty these guys become. And whether it's vaping or when I talked to Edward, just talking about even just knowing when to like let a beat just play itself out. Like obviously on the page, you're not doing that, but in seeing the movie, when you get your big moment at the end, just having that moment of let Ray just deal with this for as long as we think the audience needs to deal with it. Let them turn to each other. It's just a brilliant bit of comedy, editing, and also just like for you, trusting that that should still be the ending. Because I would imagine there's a version of this movie that doesn't have that ending.
I was very nervous about that ending. It is the ending of the book. In fact, like that scene is actually the ending of the book, and we always sort of felt, well, we have to have something after that because the audience need time to get used to the idea, and Rafe's character needs time to get used to the idea. So we did add stuff after it, but there was a draft where I tried putting the reveal sort of earlier before the final vote, and it just didn't work. It's like the energy went out of the thing,
The only thing people are going to be thinking about. I mean, literally at Telluride, we're film critics and we're turning and starting to mutter and talking like, what the, oh my God. And I think it's, and, for people who read the book or people who, looked it up beforehand, I think you go in kind of like, how the hell are they going to pull that off? That is, if done even slightly poorly, bad. Like that, which I imagine is a fun challenge. Also, like,
wasn't that fun? It was a scary challenge because I was thinking exactly the same thing. I thought, man, if we get this wrong, it's really bad. So yeah, there were a couple of things throughout the film, like Benita's speech that has to change the cardinal's mind, and that last reveal, how to handle that I kind of worried over more than anything else.
Oh yeah, and I love that different people notice different things. One of my friends saw it with her family over the holiday, and she was talking about how she loved that. Obviously, you have your liberal icon cardinal, and yet he doesn't talk to any of the women in the movie. And it's one of those things that I guess I'm stupid. I didn't think of it the first time, but you go, yeah, he's a fucking hypocrite too. Like everyone in the movie is. Yeah, it's such a great example of this is what we have. This is what we have to work with, and
yeah,
choose your poison in some. Yeah,
it's a really good point, isn't it? That you kind of it's set out as if, oh well, it's the choice between the liberals and the conservatives, and like you say, by the end you kind of think they're all the problem. That system's the problem, and you need a paradigm shift, which is, I guess, what Benitez sort of represents.
Yeah, it is. It's in some ways a happy ending because you're probably getting the best man for the job, at least in terms of who we're presented with. But yeah, it's considering no one who, if it's just finding out on CNN who the new pope is, you're not gonna know any of that stuff. You're just gonna go, who? And that's honestly how most of us impact with it. Like I'm sitting here in Brooklyn. I'm not exactly learned on who's, second, third, fourth, fifth in line in the way that I would be, every primary season. I know I can tell you more than we need to know about Dean Phillips. Not that I like, it's the things that we know and we don't know. So I think that the movie plays so well to those things. It really it also just, I think, hit a nerve this year too. It's such a perfect timing for this kind of movie.
Which was completely accidental, of course, because we were almost ready for last year, and then it just couldn't quite get it together in time. Yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it? Somebody asked me about that, like, was I thinking about the political situation in America when I was working on it. And I remember, because the first draft was written quite a long time ago, it was Trump's first term. And I remember sort of thinking, the thing I like about Conclave is it feels quite specific and it feels quite topical. It feels quite contemporary. It also feels like, but these are always the narratives with politics. It's always about, do you lose your way? Do you become corrupted? Do you become seduced by power? Who can remain, true and pure? And I thought, well, that's for thousands of years, that's what we've been discussing in relation to politics. So I love the way the book kind of seemed to give us both of those things at the same time.
Oh, yeah. The little things you get by setting it now are just modern involved with traditional, having the real like high tech little coffee machines in the room, or like we said, honestly, just the electric vape in a place that's 1,000 years old. There's something about that. It's even better than like stamping out a cigarette. There's just something about pulling it out. Vape. And also just the pleased look on his face.
I
It's just
know. I mean, that was Sergio's idea, the vape. That wasn't in the script, and he's such a good comic actor, Sergio. Every scene he was in, he would do something, and we kind of go, I don't think we can leave that in because it's just going to draw all the attention and get laughs. He was so good.
when I spoke to when I was talking to everyone about the movie, it's just funny how everyone talks about everyone else in the film. When I spoke to John, he was like, you don't even realize until you make it, everyone else at the table is the best actor in their country. This is just, and how many audiences won't know that, but we went and got the best guy from every country. And I'm sitting at this table and he's like, and I'm looking at Stanley playing with he's playing words on his phone and I'm reading my book and everyone's doing their thing. But he's like, everyone here's a genius. There's not, I might be the weak, and he's John Lithgow.
Well, that's so like John to be that modest. It was a great cast. I mean, it was, and it was, I'm not usually on set, but Edward sort of invited me to be on set, so I was, and it was that lovely thing of thinking, you feel like you've, like a lot of the dialogue and the scenes just in the end felt like scaffolding you could start to dismantle because it wasn't necessary because these guys are all so incredibly good,
Also,
they can do.
Yeah. Also good for you to be on set because when I saw it at Telluride, Edward's big speech was after putting everyone in the mud and muck for a year, he promised everyone the next movie would be in like Bermuda. And he's like,
Yeah,
it wasn't quite, but this was a good compromise.
It was pretty good. Yeah. If you got to be on set for a couple of months, it's pretty good to be in Rome rather than in the muddy field. Yeah.
So I'm so glad you got to do it. And I love the fact that it's being embraced across the board. The Globes win was such a cool thing. Going into, by the time you blink, it's going to be the Oscar nominations again. And obviously this is a thing you've been involved with before, but it's still, I imagine in the best way, surreal to be like, I sat there and cursed at myself for months trying to write something that people would not think was terrible, let alone is good. And eventually gets to the point where people want to give you things for it and talk about it. It's, it's definitely, I think, good fuel for, I want to see 10 more things from you.
I want to do 10 more things. It's so weird though, isn't it? Because you can just never tell whether something's going to work or not. I knew I liked it. In my head, it was quite a small little film, that I was just interested in. I never really, like, my daughter's 23 and lots of her friends really like it. And I just didn't expect that. I didn't expect it to connect with like a young audience, and that's really lovely.
Oh yeah, sure. And it means that it's okay to try things. I think that's the best thing is you can go, like you said, you were making it as a small little thing that like, this is not going to make or break me. I'll be able to work even if nobody likes this. And I think it does the fuel to be like, well, if I like it, that's a good starting point. Let's just see where it goes. Because also,
I mean, what are the starting point can you have really? Because if you start trying to double guess what other people want to see, I think that's a really slippery slope to be on.
Also, yeah, and also, you've taken meetings in your life before. When they want to pay you to write things that you didn't generate, it's usually something you've already done or something you're like, they picked a name out of a hat. Like, why am I here? Like, it never feels like, oh, you saw my movies and know that I can do this thing I haven't done before. It's I've already done this. I should just change the title of the other movie and see if they'll pay me. So, doing it. Oh, thank you so much for doing this and taking time out on a busy time and enjoy it.
It was a pleasure, Joe. Thank you for your kind words on the film. I really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for doing this and keep up the good work, man.
Thanks very much. Take care.
You too. Be well.